culinary water service is $80,000. Mr. Carter.
So I have no additional comments unless you.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now open. Ms. Evans, do we have anything from you?
No, sir. I have no public and no emails.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Mayor, I don't have any text messages either.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Move on to 5B, consideration to approve the non-reciprocal interfund activity transfer of resources utilized by the city's general fund, provided by the city's water fund. The estimated value of the water service is $80,000. Council, do you have any further questions for Mr. Carden?
Mayor, can I interrupt here briefly? I think we are down on the internet. Shady, can you tell?
It came back up, Steve. It was only down for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, I just thought I got a message from a citizen that we were down, so I wanted to make sure we were back up. Thank you.
The only thing is Cody, I just texted you, but I'll just ask you, it's really blurry ever since I restarted it. Do you have any tips to make it not so blurry?
No, and I'm looking at it online and it looks okay.
Okay, maybe it's just on my side, so never mind. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions on item 5B? Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve the non-reciprocal interfund activity transfer of resources utilized by the city's general fund as provided by the city's water fund?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous in favor. Move on next to action item number 6. This is to review fraud risk questionnaire for submission to the state auditor's office. Mr. Carden.
Okay, so this is a new requirement from the state auditor's office, and we're required to go over it with you guys. And so we have been working on it as a city staff, and you can see on page 214, I have it pulled up on my screen. This is the actual fraud risk assessment, and all of these questions, well, not all of them, but the vast majority of them tie to misappropriations that have occurred in the state in the last few years. And so they're trying to arbitrarily maybe put into effect what risk levels would be associated with things. And so we're required by state law now to go through this and submit it to the state auditor's office by June 30th and provide it to you guys and talk to you about it. A lot of these things we have. There are a few things that we need to work on, such as we do not have 2A, a conflict of interest policy currently. So we'll need to work on that for next year. And there's a few other things on here that we need to work on. Just making sure, most of them are just making sure that we have a policy in place to formalize what we're doing and to make sure that we're 100% in compliance with what the state would like us to do. I don't know if you have any other questions about that. We've provided you with both the actual form that we have to fill out and submit to the state, as well as the implementation guide that provides some more information on this fraud risk discussion and an assessment, but we just wanted to make you aware of it. Is there any questions that any of you have for me on this?
And if I could just add a couple things, our council rules and procedures that we put in place a few years ago, helps us on some of these things, but we'll still have to tweak some of that. We'll be bringing more stuff into you that we're not exactly in line with what they want, but overall, I don't think we're going to be in really bad shape, but there will be some changes, things we'll be bringing forth here next little while.
What is the timeline that we have to have this in compliance?
So, well, we have to submit to the state by June 30th. But your question's kind of loaded. We can lead it however we want. Like if you want to have a score of below 200, so you're very high risk, you can do that. The state's just trying to make it very transparent to governing boards where they're operating with their entity by what they're doing with the policies and procedures that they have in place or the other actions that they're taking. And so we as an entity can decide at what level we want to operate. And then we fill out this questionnaire. Our financial auditors on an annual basis will review it, and it'll have some impact on our state reports. So say we scored a 320, so we would be in the low section here. Then on some of our state reports that are included in our financial audited statements, it would reflect that we were deemed to have a low risk level associated with misappropriations and fraud.
Okay, so basically this can be a work in progress as situations arise or are identified, and you put a policy in place. And so, because you used the first term earlier in your presentation about that, we'll be, discussing it for next year. And so I thought, well, okay, so I see where you're getting at now, and it's strictly something that is always needs to be looked at and massaged or modified or whatever as circumstances or situations arise. Is that a good way to describe it?
That's an accurate depiction, and I believe there's a chance that, knowing the state auditor's office, this will kind of be an evolving questionnaire as well. I would assume that as other misappropriations or other things come up, they'll probably tweak it a little bit, and we'll have to continue to evolve with them if we want to. And most of the items on here are really good, and most of them, as Steve alluded to, we have them. We may not spell them out or address them exactly how the state auditor's office would like them to be. And so we'll probably need to do a little bit of cleanup and a little bit of modifying and adding a few things to get, because obviously our goal too is to keep risk at a very low level. And so that's our end goal as an entity. It'll just take us, we might be there now, we're close, but the tab on here that we probably will add and try and shore up a little bit.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
so this document is self-reporting, right? Is there any criteria that they're not going to come back and check it out and say you scored yourself too high or too low? It's basically self-reporting.
Our financial auditors, when they do the audit, they can look at all these things. They usually request like our personnel policies and our operating procedures and guidelines. So they would be the ones that would kind of grade us, if you will, and see if we answered it accurately or
So
if they
there is
found
some
there was a
accountability
deficiency.
then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe a little insight in the financial world. Since 2007, there's been a clear government oversight that directs elected officials. So for a financial institution, boards of directors, in our case, councils and mayors, elected officials to be accountable for fraud risk and appropriate use of and care for funds and activities surrounding funds. So this kind of mirrors that. And what they're looking for with federal and state auditors of financial institutions is controls in place, but more importantly, progress each from year to year, and accountability always reported to the elected people, so that you're accountable. We are accountable to the people.
Good. Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Assume there's no vote on this, Steve. It just says review it. We've done that, right?
Yeah, and we just wanted to put you on notice because a lot of this stuff will be coming down the tube. Some of it's really easy for us to implement, some will take a little bit more time, so.
Okay, move on to action item number 7. This is consideration of resolution 2020-12. This is authorizing a pickup contribution for public safety and firefighter Tier 2 employee retirement contributions to the Utah retirement system and a contribution to a 401k/457 plan to other Tier 2 participants. Mr. Carden, are you the person?
I am. Thank you, Mayor. Let me give you a little background on this. And our executive summary actually ended up a little bit misleading, maybe. And let me clear it up, and hopefully the resolution is better. Let me jump back to May 5th. If you remember, we talked a little bit about how there was a change in state law. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, the police and fire department throughout the state went to the state legislature and said, hey, we're having a really hard time recruiting. We feel like part of it's tied to our benefits under Tier 2. The amount of service credit that an employee receives under Tier 2 is significantly less than Tier 1. And they felt like that was an ongoing issue. It honestly is probably with all Tier 2 employees. And the police and fire have kind of been the ones leading the charge on that. And so as a result of that, Tier 2 was set up that the entities were responsible for a certain amount of the contribution. And if contributions ever exceeded that amount, then the individual employee would be responsible to pick up and make that election. However, per URS and IRS guidelines, the city actually has the option to pick up, if you will, that contribution on behalf of the employee. And so we talked about that on May 5th. So and this is what we're trying to do. So these are the rates as provided by the Utah retirement system. So hopefully this will kind of help show the differences. So this is the rate that we pay for URS retirement associated with Tier 1 police. So Tier 2, right now we pay the 26.99%. These are the rates for next year. The rate, because of those changes, has went up. So the total contribution required is 29.26%. 2.27% of that is required to come is from the employee. If we go ahead and make this pickup election, which we would like to do, we're going to make that contribution on behalf of the employee. And that's basically what the resolution says. If we don't make this pickup election, then we're requiring any of our Tier 2 firefighters and police to automatically lose or forego like 2.27% of their wage to make this contribution annually. I've reached out and received notice from a lot of the different entities across the state. Probably the vast majority of them are making this pickup election. There are a few, South Ogden, unless things have changed, they are not making this pickup election. And so that will be a requirement of their employees to make that. So it's a good thing to do in that it helps differentiate us, and where the vast majority of other entities are planning on making this pickup election and are probably having the same discussion tonight. It's something that as employees are looking and we're hoping to recruit people, it's one more thing that we have to offer them to say, hey, come work for us at Riverdale, and this is why. Associated with this too, we have one other thing in talking to Roger about it. There's this same differential associated with other Tier 2 employees, and we actually have to make it for all the police and fire. So the other thing that we thought, well, we only have a few other Tier 2 employees. The vast majority are fire and police. And that's why we have the second portion of making a 401k or a 457 contribution on behalf of the other Tier 2 employees of the city, is just trying to keep it fair, because we're doing something else for the tier 2 employees that are receiving this reduced benefit that work in fire and police. We're trying to do the same thing for the other tier 2 employees. And so that's why that contribution is proposed only to the other tier 2 employees and not to the tier 1, because they're already receiving a greater benefit through URS. So I know that's very confusing, and I probably didn't do the greatest job of explaining it. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to explain them. A lot of the language and verbiage used in this resolution is straight from state law and IRS law, making sure that we're dotting all the I's and checking all the T's, if you will, to make sure that we meet the requirements. We actually have to submit this resolution to the state so that they can verify that we're in compliance before they'll let us make these contributions on behalf of our employees. And all of these items are included in the budget that you just approved. So we've been able to fit them into the budget. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Cody, I thought you did a great job explaining that.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Cody, I know you said it's in the budget. Can you just remind me, I guess, what kind of the total dollar amount we're looking at here to do it for all the employees is?
So, and I'm trying to remember the exact amount. It's not significant. I think for the tier 2 employees that weren't public safety, it was like a couple $1,000s. It wasn't significant. And for the other public safety employees, it wasn't very significant either. We really don't have very many tier 2 employees. The vast majority of our employees are all tier 1. And I can't honestly remember, because when I calculated it, I just did the full rates. And I looked at it once, but it's been a while ago. But it's not a significant amount of money. And as you can see, like in the contribution rates, so for a tier 1 employee for public safety, we're paying 35.71%. For a tier 2, even with this contribution, we're only paying 29.26%. So, and they're still receiving a little bit less of a benefit. So we're still saving money with our tier 2 employees over the tier 1, even doing these additional contributions for this pickup election.
And do we have an option of doing it just for the fire or just for the police?
No, we have to do it
Which one?
for all of them or none of them.
Just curious. Just curious.
Can't spend on that.
I'm on the record for liking them both, just so you know.
So I'm sure, and Jared and Scott, I'm sure, can talk about it. I believe both of them are really in favor of this, just because it is something that, especially if the vast majority of other entities are doing it, it's hard for us to recruit people if we don't do it. And like with South Ogden, you know, we've been, should we use the word recruiting a lot of people from them recently, and it just helps us and helps us differentiate us. So, and this rate, just know going forward, the reason the resolution doesn't include a rate is because this rate can change a little bit over time based upon what URS calculates that need is going to be. So,
Question, please. Is this a one-time? Meaning, do we need to evaluate this every year, or is this just perpetual?
Perpetual. Once we make it, we've made it, and that's where we'll stand. So, as long as there's not a change within the retirement system.
What are the chances that it could go, like, that the percent could change a lot? Is there any chance that it could go up significantly?
So I participated in a webinar with URS on this, and they said that they didn't anticipate the rate going up significantly. And that's one of the things they've really tried to do with Tier 2. The other thing, if you look at the state right now with URS, they don't publish a ton of data, but a lot of the Tier 2 retirement funds, they're actually fully funded. And so in theory, there shouldn't really be a significant need, as long as the rate should be sufficient to keep us going. Where like with the Tier 1, they're still trying to catch up. And so that's why their rate's higher. And actually, even with like tier 2 employees, a portion of that, and I don't think this rate sheet shows it, but a portion of their contribution actually goes towards tier 1 for tier 2 employees to help continue to fund tier 1. So
I'm just wondering if we need to put a maximum on it, because sometimes, like if it were to go up and let's say it's way down the road and it's getting a little bit out of hand, it can be kind of hard and kind of unpopular to undo that kind of stuff. And if it becomes too much of a burden on the city, it could end up hurting them, hurting all of us if we don't put, no more than a certain % on it for the future.
Hey, Cody, can I add something to that really quick?
Go for it.
I think part of this tier 2 adjustment was made a little while back, and it's to even out the tier 1 versus tier 2 for our public safety. Extending that out to 25 years compared to 20 for a very similar benefit. They had to do some sort of adjustment to get it to where it was reasonable to bring in new employees at a very similar rate, even though we added 5 years to the retirement plan.
I also just want to make a comment on that. Our officers we don't have very many tier 2. Our officers that are in tier 2 already feel like they get the same benefit that tier 1 employees get. When they made that change, they were requiring them at the time to do 25 years and only get 37.5%, where a tier 1 was getting 60% at 25 years. So it was significant. And so when we lobbied to make that change, I believe, if I remember right, the state decided to go ahead and pick that up for their employees. And the cities and counties were left on their own. But it would be extremely unpopular to go to these guys and say, look, we realize that your retirement is still less than us in tier 1. And by the way, we're also going to make you pay a portion of it while you got it. So it would be a really hard sell. Riverdale's only stepped up to the plate on these retirement changes and issues to make it the best benefit that we possibly can. There's definitely concerns over that percentage amount down the road, but I think like Cody's saying, to where that's fully funded, it is in really good shape right now.
If I could make a couple comments, if you're going to put in a cap, the cap would be not, from my perspective, not to exceed a tier 1, because there's, in those percentages that was brought out or pointed out, that would make it fairly compatible somewhat. But so if we do have a cap, rather than come up with some sort of arbitrary number, putting it in a comparison to like a tier 1 I think would be more appropriate. But I'm not crazy about capping that. The other thing is it's becoming very hard to get somebody. I'm going to speak police, and I think the same could be said here shortly of the fire, to recruit. And it's been a long time since Riverdale has hired somebody where we've had to pay them a salary plus pay them a salary while they're in police academy or in patrolling academy post, whatever that's referred to. And so, we're in a position because we can recruit or poach, is probably a better word, from other departments, some of their top tier candidates, because we do offer a very, not just pay, but we offer good training, good equipment, makes us a desirable place to work for peace officers, which I think, from my perspective, is an admirable position to be in. Thank you.
Mayor, it's Roger.
Go ahead, Roger.
I'd echo what Councilmember Stevens just said. Riverdale is in a prime position to be at the top with who we hired relative to police, and now we see it even in the fire department. It's just hard to find people. I think this is a small thing to do that can pay great benefits down the road as we hire and look for individuals to replace. Quite frankly, some firemen and some police officers that are getting close to retirement. We've seen a lot of police as well retire and go work elsewhere down in Salt Lake or with PA. I think this is a great thing to do. And it does impact the city's budget a terrible amount. So,
Thank you, Roger.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So, I mean, I support it completely. I think it's great, and I think, you know, we do always want to have, offer just a little bit more to keep our both our fire and police, you know, just the top of the line. I was looking for some sort of safety valve, because I think as people do retire, we may, if I understand it right, pick up more of the tier 2 employees, and I just worry about down the road if we're able to sustain it. You know, I think right now it's great. Like, let's absolutely do it for now, but I just was looking for some sort of safety mechanism or a way out if it gets too bad down the road.
And I think the one thing is right now, everybody, for the most part, even the state, is going to be in a similar position. And so I think that is one thing that will help drive it. And I think if it gets to the point that it starts getting out of control, then that's probably when they'd start looking at the retirement system again. And I just looked it up. And I'm not, you can't quote me on these, but I think we're talking less than like 25,000. I'm probably closer to 15 for these contributions on an annual basis. So it's not a significant right now.
Going forward, is that correct that everybody we hire will be tier 2 from now on, or that's new?
Not that's new, not necessarily. A lot of the employees that we've been hiring, if we use Bart's term of poaching, or Councilor Stevens, a lot of those have been tier 1. We still have very few tier 2 employees.
Okay.
But you're right, as time goes on, that demographic will come and grow. And the only bad thing about doing what Councilor Stevens says is at some point tier 1 will be obsolete. There won't be any employees in there, and the state probably won't continue to update URS. So, or that tier 1 contribution rate is, there's nobody participating in that anymore. And so that's the only bad thing about worrying it in that regard, is we might get to the point that what is a tier 1 contribution?
Okay, then the other question is, I asked earlier if this was going to be readdressed every year, and it's not, because it's perpetual, as you commented. But then we as a council can readdress this at a point in time in the future. Now, I'm sure it won't be popular, as President Reagan said, is when you create a federal agency, that's the closest thing to eternity you'll ever experience in this life. But if you start paying somebody at a certain rate, or have contributions at a certain rate, to reduce that is going to be highly unpopular. But it is viable. That is something. That's a question. Is it viable that we can do that?
I think if we ever found ourselves reducing it, we would be reducing it kind of in concert with the state and other municipalities. So if that ever came to that, then we wouldn't be doing anything unusual. I think the key here is what we are doing is trying to get parity with our peer cities, so that we can recruit and still maintain that leadership that we have. So I'm in support of it.
It's a good point, Steve.
I'm just going to add, we've already had a difficult time recruiting. If you think people are going to be standing in line to be a police officer right now, I just don't see that happening. I've got to have every tool that I can to be able to have the very best person. I put more energy into hiring than anything that I do. I think it's my most important responsibility. I have to be able to hire the very best officers I can here that have that I have full trust and integrity, and I've got to be able to provide them the best benefits to attract them to come here.
I just want to echo Brinkman. I look at his officers and think of the high quality that we have. We deal with our officers all the time. Our officers protect us in the fire world. And I just don't see how we can't move forward with this.
A quick question. Is a part-time, when you hire somebody part-time, like the fire has quite a number of part-time employees, are they also fully vested in this tier 2?
They are not.
They're not. So the city has a policy on what constitutes a full-time employee or a part-time employee that qualifies for URS benefits. And most of those, most of those part-time employees, like Rich has a lot of them in his department, Jared has some of them in his department, they do not qualify for retirement.
Let me just maybe make a comment or two. I've heard the term poach and steal and from other cities. I just like that maybe for the record, we've been very fortunate. I know police. Boy, what I see the type of people that we're able to pick up. Unfortunately, they do come from other cities, but the reason they come here is for a couple of reasons. One is pay and benefits, which happens to be probably a little bit better, and the other is the leadership and the work conditions. I know Riverdale, and I hear this from other people, is kind of the department of choice to work, and we don't actively poach and steal. We just provide a good place to work, and when these jobs are announced, word gets out. I'm sure if somebody's from another city, a former officer, they pass it on, but they apply and we hire them, but we don't actively. I don't believe any of the chiefs will tell you they don't go out and solicit and try to take people from other agencies, because that's a real tough thing, recruiting our public safety folks. And I just thought I'd mention that. But what makes it good is it's these things like what they're talking about tonight. This resolution, it makes things just a little bit better, and that's why they apply here, because it is a little better. And they come and they really, I don't want to knock on wood, but we have people retire here, and there's a reason for that. Our animal control officer, Bonnie, just retired with 30 years of service, and the gal they picked up got 22 years. And she started when she was really young, so she's she's looking forward to quite a few more years here at Riverdale. But I just thought I'd share that with you, just from what I see. But we have to be careful using the poach and steal and things. But funny how things like that get in the newspapers. So, all right. Any other questions or comments?
If I could just caveat that there's a lot of having a family member in law enforcement. There's a reputation, and I touched on it earlier, but that gives a reputation for Riverdale, and it's not just the pay, although the pay is certainly a factor. But when you talk to police officers, and I'm sure it's also going to be in the fire also, is that the quality of the equipment and the training, which are not often appreciated by those outside of law enforcement, but those things are expensive also. So, adding to this is really almost a drop in the bucket into the budget of having a top tier police force, because the training and equipment is huge for the actual, officers on the street. And those are, in Weber County, Riverdale has a really good reputation for those characteristics.
The other thing I mentioned is we are in a difficult budget year, and all of our department heads, but including and especially our public safety, Scott and Jared, they've both been wonderful to work with, in being willing to move stuff and postpone things so that we can make the budget work. And I think they do, alluding to what Councillor Stevens has said, they do a really good job of managing not only their departments, but also the finances associated with their departments. And I think that's very helpful, especially from my seat. And I think we are in a little bit of a tough political climate and economic climate, and we've still been able to make those things work because of that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? With that, do we have a motion on Resolution 2020-12 authorizing the pickup contribution for public safety and firefighter 2 employee retirement contributions for the URS and contribution to a 401k 457 plan to other Tier 2 participants?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Ms. Evans, would you poll the council on the resolution, please?
Councilmember Ellis,
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Unanimous in favor. Thank you very much. Move on to action item number 8. Our final action item, consideration of resolution 2020-13. This is proposed changes to the Riverdale City Consolidated Fee Schedule. Mr. Carden.
Thank you, Mayor. And I apologize, we didn't get an executive summary in with this item, but I'll hit upon it. I talked a little bit about it in the work session. Like I said, just to summarize, Gold Cross can provide us with some additional functionality, and not really us, but our patients that we've transported. And some of this functionality allows them to log on to almost like an account platform and see how much they owe, their remaining balances, to set up recurring payments, and those kind of things with electronic means, whether that's a debit card or a credit card or a bank ACH. But to utilize the vendor that works the best and integrates the most with Gold Cross, they are higher fees and merchant fees. And so we really feel like we need to recoup those before we could recommend moving forward with providing that additional functionality. Right now, what they have to do is they have to call the Civic Center. We make a payment, and then we need to we notify Kristen, who then Kristen notifies Gold Cross that they made a payment. And it's just kind of a headache and a hassle for them. And we've had a lot of people request that we have a little better system. And so this is what Jared and Kristen found that would be the best. And we just thought this is what we needed on the back end. And that was we reached out to all the other department heads, and nobody else had any fee schedule changes for this year. This was the only thing that we felt like we needed to take care of this year. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Question.
Go ahead.
This is only in reference to fire department fees, right?
Only in ambulance transportation fees. So none of the other fire fees, none of the other city fees, only ambulance payments. And it wouldn't apply if they wanted to pay like by cash or by check. It would only apply if they want to do those electronic fees.
Is that based on the average bill? Because we're paying a merchant fee of a percentage of the amount, correct?
Correct. Most of the people who want to utilize this, they want to pay like $50 a month. Most of the people who are going to pay off their whole bill, they send us a check, and this doesn't even apply to. It's the people who financially say, hey, can I pay $50 a month? And this allows them to schedule that one time, and then it just automatically be a reoccurring payment if they so choose.
Got it.
And that's all being done through Gold Cross, correct?
That is correct. Well, it will be if you approve this.
Any other questions? We have a motion on Resolution 2020-13. These are the proposed changes to the Riverdale City Consolidated Fee Schedule.
So moved, as stated in the packet.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Evans, will you poll the council on the resolution, please?
Councilmember Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Arnold,
Aye.
Councilmember Hilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember Ellis.
Aye.
It's unanimous in favor, thank you. Okay, Ms. Evans, do we have any other public comment?
You guys, are you here for public comment?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second.
Mr. Taylor,
I do have a gentleman, sorry, that has a public comment.
okay.
It's just on right here. Hi there, and this is a little different than what I'm used to, and I'm sorry to keep you a little later. We're actually collecting the signatures for something that was become apparent to us in the south side of Riverdale, that there's been kind of a suggestion that there's going to be an opening of both lanes of Ritter Drive. Being a future resident of up there by 1250 West, I currently live in the trailer park, me and my wife right now, and in moving up there, our whole goal was to just live up there and to be able to have the means of not having the traffic that is projected is going to be coming on Riverdale Road. And I'm not here to mainly just get into that. I'm here to mainly just support facts, in the sense that a lot of suggestions have gone around in saying that the south side of Riverdale, it's a unanimous vote that everyone wants it open, Riverdale Road back open, but it's actually the opposite. And these sheets that I'm going to leave here with you guys, and also just a recap on what we've experienced, and just kind of some information on what we've found for reasons to not have Riverdale or Ritter Drive open, are just some facts that we just want to give to the members here, and also to the city council and the mayor, yourself. I was actually able to meet with your grandson, and he was able to speak very highly of that, as well, as he's going to be my next door neighbor. So we're excited to be able to live in Riverdale and to be part of this great city, but we also want to just kind of voice our opinion as city members, and just kind of voice that, in that we would like to keep Riverdale or Ritter Drive as a one-lane road, and keep it at that. So I don't know if there's any questions that you guys have that I might be able to take back. We have meetings every Thursday. If any of you guys would be interested in coming to one of those meetings, and we usually host, how many members would you say? About 20 plus every week, Brian? So we usually host about 20 plus members, and we're up for food for thought of, if any of you guys would like to come and be there with us. It's right on 1250, right? I want to say it's right by the new sales office that Richmond America has there. But I don't know where we go from there. I'm going to leave these papers here, but that's where we're coming from as the community.
Yeah, just leave those with the city recorder there, Shaylee. Can we get your name for the record, please?
Yeah, you can. It's Matthew Evans.
Matthew Evans.
Yep. And so we have those, and we also have some more sheets as well that I'll probably bring for the next city council meeting. But the numbers are just kind of keep going. We've probably got about a quarter of the votes there, or the quarter of the signatures there, as the petition to keep it closed. And we've counted 140 votes so far in keeping it closed. And there's going to be more, because there's just a lot of people that are against having that open. So Thank you, Norm.
Thank you, Matthew, for being here. Good luck to you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other public comment?
Okay, good deal. And that's all I have, and I don't have any emails.
Mr. Taylor?
I don't have any texts, Mayor.
Okay, move on next to discretionary. I've got just one item. Roger, are you still with us?
I'm here, Mayor.
I thought maybe you'd gone to eat your dinner. I know you get a little late. Would you like to just give an update to the council and staff how you're doing? I think they would probably appreciate just a short update on what's going on down there at the Huntsman Hotel.
Yeah, I've been here just over a week now. The transplant was a good transplant. That happened on the 10th. And right now is the chemotherapy is what it's doing is it's killing all the cells that died in my body. So that would include bone marrow cells or GI tract cells. So I got a lot of sores right now in my mouth. I can't talk very well. But once the numbers get down pretty low, I'll stay down there for a period of time. And then the new cells, which my doctor gave to me, they will begin replicating and finding a home in the currently vacant bone marrow of my body. So they're going to find a home there and start replicating, and from there it's trying to get under control. So my body doesn't reject the new cells, and the new cells don't reject me. So there'll be a period where I'll be on oral medications, anti-rejection medications once I get from the hospital. But I feel good. I feel much better than when I was in here for that previous month. That was pretty brutal, but this one seems to be going a little bit better. And like I said, the transplant was successful. Appreciate my sister and what she's done. So I'll be back soon.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you back. We wish you the best, and our prayers are with you for a speedy and quick recovery. So wish you the best there, Roger.
Thank you.
Glad you could be with us tonight.
I just want to thank the staff there. Like Steve said earlier in the meeting, it's amazing the quality of people that we have at Riverdale.
Yeah.
Good. Yep, that's all.
There's some pretty good ones, huh?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Do we have any other discretionary this evening?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Ellis.
Last week I announced that the Lions Club was going to give $500 to our first responders and public service. I'll be delivering those checks tomorrow to be used by those organizations or departments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ellis. That was 500 for police, 500 for fire, and 500 for public works, right?
That's correct.
Oh, that's great. I know they really appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one other thing before we adjourn. I just want to extend, it was already been brought up, one of the council mentioned it, but thanks to our city staff. And this is quite a budget under kind of some tough conditions right now. But to prepare this and do all they've done, just want to tell them big thanks for your efforts in getting this budget put together. It's quite an effort during some tough times, both with revenue and other things. So do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting before we go into our RDA meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous in favor. Thank you. Moving next to our Riverdale City RDA meeting, Tuesday, June 16th. 2020. For the record, all board members are present this evening. as our members of the staff. We have a period of time now for public comment. Do we have anyone for public comment, Ms. Evans?
I don't have any emails, and no public here would like to address you on RDA.
Okay, how about Mr. Taylor? Do you have anything?
Mayor, I don't have any texts.
All right, thank you. We're going to move quickly down to our consent items. First consent item is consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the May 19th, 2020 RDA meeting. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Moved. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Move on next. We have a closed executive session. And we'll need to go into that. We have a motion to go into the closed executive session.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Ms. Evans, would you poll the council on the closed executive session vote?
Mr. Arnold?
Aye.
Mr. Hilton?
Aye.
Mr. Stevens? Mr. Stevens?
Sorry, aye.
Mr. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Unanimous in favor. We're now in the closed